Okay, thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Reb Shlomo, for organizing and inviting me. We're going to speak about the Yesod of HBrachos and inyanim that are related to that. We'll begin with the Gemara on Daf Lamed Hey. The Gemara in Masechta Brachos and Lamed Hey concludes after a long shakla v'tarya. The Yesod from the Yesod for the Machayev of a bracha is Tzvarahu. It is also for a person to benefit, enjoy from this world without a bracha. Says Rashi on the side, Tzvarahu the kiva the nena tzorich lahoides l'misha bara. Since he was nena, he has to thank the person or the being, the Rebbeinu Shleilim who created it. Says the Gemara Vaita, Tana Rabbanan, also Adam Sheyena min ha'olam hazeh b'lo bracha. It's also a person to enjoy something from this world without a bracha. V'chol hanena min ha'olam hazeh b'lo bracha, and anyone who enjoys from this world without a bracha. What's going on the page? We're in the bottom of the page, so you can't see it unless you get to the bottom. He's small. It's as if
Tommy. Scroll down.
Me?
No, I'm talking to the computer. I'm talking to the computer.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good. I hope the computer doesn't ask me any kashas during this year. The Gemara says, "My takante." What is the way you correct the problem if you ate without a bracha? Yelach eitzel chacham. You should go to a chacham. In fact, the Gemara, Yelach eitzel chacham, my ovidlei. Ha'ovidlei sur. What's a chacham going to tell you? You ate a piece of cake. You didn't make a bracha. Go to a chacham. What is he going to take away the avera? Go to a chacham initially. So here we have two things we're bringing out from the Gemara. Number one, the Yesod of the bracha, of the Machayev, the bracha is bracha. A person can't be nena from this world without a bracha. And Rashi says you have to thank to Rebbeinu Shlomo who created it. And then you have the Gemara that says that if a person who ate without a bracha, correct it. Go to a chacham. The Gemara says, what's a chacham going to help you? Go originally to a chacham to learn Hilchos Brachos. I saw a shaila and I heard that Reb Chaim Kanievsky asked the Shver both Zichronim Levracha from the Gemara and Daf Mem Aleph. Nun Aleph. Daf Nun Aleph. There's a Gemara in Nun Aleph that says, Misha Ochal, B'shos, about the fifth line, V'loi birach mao, sheyachsev yivarech. A person ate or drank without a bracha. Should he make the bracha afterwards? The Gemara says, Omlu Misha Ochal shum, v'reichei noidev, yachsev yochel shum acharkach, Kadeshi Reichi Noidev. Omer Ravina. Ravina says, Hilkoch afilu gomer sudasa yachsev yarech. Shitas Ravina is that you can make a bracha after you ate. Shitas Ravina is you can make a bracha after you ate. Omer Ravina Hilkoch afilu gomer sudasa yachsev yarech. We don't paskin that way. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, such a shita. But in any event, Ravina holds that way. So Reb Chaim asked the Shver. The Gemara says over here on Daf Lamed Hey that if a person eats with a bracha, he should go to a chacham to correct it. The Gemara says, what's the chacham going to do? He ate already. The Gemara has to say, we meant to say he should go before he eats so he should know which bracha to make. Ask Reb Chaim, maybe the Gemara is going like Ravina, the original members like Ravina, who says you can make a bracha after you ate. If you can make a bracha after you ate, it's a very good shaila. My takante. If a person ate without a bracha, what's the takana? Go to a chacham, you make the bracha after you ate. According to Ravina, you can make a bracha after you ate. This is a Shiloh of Chaim Mass. He could say maybe it's a hefsek, he has to walk to the chacham. I mean, I don't think that's the teretz. Rav Elyashiv said a very beautiful teretz. Rav Elyashiv said, if you look in the Gemara, it says, Osir lahadam sheyenim min olam zebuloi bracha. It's also for a person to be nene olam zebuloi bracha.
Hey, so
There's an
go
isser.
back to Lamed Hay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Lamed Hay, Daf Lamed Hay. There's an isser to eat without a bracha. And there's also a mitzvah to make a bracha. The Pashas, the Gemara, we have to understand, but this is what he said, and we're going to bring other rayas to it. So it comes out, there's an isser, and the Gemara says the isser is daima to an isser me'ila, like your mile from hektish. And then there's a mitzvah l'hoidis l'Hashem. Ravina never meant that if you make a bracha after you ate, you could cancel the isser of being nena from hektish or stealing from the Rebbeinu Shloim. He never meant that. You can't correct that later. A person stole, you can't correct it later. You were a mile, you can't correct it later. Ravina only holds the second chiyuv, we'll call it, was a chiyuv l'hoidos l'Hashem. That chiyuv, you could be makayim afterwards. So therefore, our Gemara is very good. The Gemara says, it's also to be nena ma'olam hazeh b'loi bracha. If you're an nana, how do you correct it? The Chacham can't tell you, make a bracha, because the bracha doesn't take away the Isser Gzeila retroactively. The bracha only helps you satisfy the Chayv L'Hoidis L'Hashem. So therefore, what is Rabbi Yashiv telling us? There is a Chayv L'Hoidis L'Hashem, and there's an Isser. If you can make a bracha afterwards, like Ravina, that's only L'Hoidis L'Hashem. The Isser, you have no way of correcting after you did it. This is a word for Rabbi Yashiv. The Welt says over, Reb Chaim asked the Shaila. I don't know where. I heard it years and years ago, but others have heard it also. The Gemara says, Osir la'adam sheyenim olam hazeh b'loi bracha. It's an Isser. What does an Oinen do? If someone's an Oinen lo aleinu, he lost one of the Zayin Krayim, he's potter of mitzvahs, and we paskin not only is he potter, it's also for him to do mitzvahs. So there is a sheet that the Kolbo brings down that an Oinen has to make a bracha, and the understanding is simple. He's not potter from Isurim. He can't eat treif. He can't steal. He can't wear shatnez. He's potter from tefillin. He's potter from mitzvahs essays, but he's chayv and lice essays. But when it comes to eating, the Kolbo says he can't eat without a bracha. It says, Asur l'adam she'enem min olam hazeh b'loi bracha. But we paskin an Oinen doesn't make a bracha. If an Oinen doesn't make a bracha, I can ask you a question. It says, Asur l'adam she'enem min olam hazeh b'loi bracha. How does he get potter from the Yisurim? He has Yisurim. So Reb Chaim said, a chiddush. It's also pashas. The Gemara is difficult to understand. He said, the Isser is only in place when there's a chiyuv l'hoidos. If you're mechuyev to thank the Rebbeinu Shloim, it's also to take. But if you're not mechuyev to thank the Rebbeinu Shloim, then there is no Isser to take. So it comes out, the chiyuv bracha is chal, and it's also to take without reciting the bracha. A Oinen does not have a chiyuv to make a bracha, hence an Oinen does not have an Isser Gzeila or Isser Me'ila when he's eating without a bracha. This is what they say over from Reb Chaim. Now, let me ask you a shaila. There is a Bir Halacha in Siman Samach Beis. Siman Samach Beis. I just want to get the, no, I got the wrong volume. Baruch Hashem. You got the right volume here. Siman Samach Beis. In Siman Samach Beis, the Bir Halacha discusses a question if a person was stuck in a Beis HaMerchatz. A person was stuck in the Beis HaMerchatz. Can the person eat without bracha? Yeah. Now, it starts really on page 192, if we have the same Mishnah Berurah, but he says, we can read the line on the bottom, Ube'emes laniyastaiti dover zeh poshamoi, de lahater mishum honest. You can't be mater because he is an honest. He can't make a bracha. You can't make a bracha, the base Americans. So you can't be mater mishum honest al bracha. She'enu yochel levarach. Why? That is a good argument. Rakim hoyoimim Chazal, if Chazal would have said mitzvah levarach, ubemes haloyomer Chazal osur lehenes uli bracha. If Chazal would have said the whole inyan of bracha is mitzvah, then you have a good tiny. You're an einish. You can't be mekayim the mitzvah anyway. You could possibly eat without a bracha. But since Chazal expressed themselves by saying, also lahenis b'li bracha. So therefore, what do you care if you're locked up in a beis hamerchatz? The Isser is still on you. So the question is this a contradiction to Reb Chaim? Reb Chaim says, if you cannot make a bracha, the halacha is an einin could eat without a bracha. Either there's an Isser to be nenem oilam hazeh b'lo bracha, but the Isser is only in place when the mitzvah is in place. If the chayiv is not in place, there is no Isser. Now, this we can answer Pashut. The Lashon of the Chavetz Chaim maybe is not 100% in agreement with this, but we can make a simple chiluk. If a person is an einin rachmana litzlan, he has no chiyuv, he is potter. He is potter. However, if a person is locked in a beis hamerchatz, it's not that he has no chiyuv to make a bracha. His hands are tied, but there's still a chiyuv. Since there's still a chiyuv, the Isser is still in place. The Isser only expires when there is no chiyuv. He is potter. He has no obligation to do it. Here he has an obligation. Person can't find the lulav and esrei. It means he's potter from lulav and esrei. It means he's chayiv, but he can't find it. What could he do? You're in the beis hamerchatz. You're not potter for making a bracha. You are an oinus. That's a chiv to make a bracha. So then it's very possible the Isser is still in place. That's how I would suggest to reconcile what they say over from Reb Chaim to what the Chavetz Chaim says. The only difficulty I have is there's a Gemara in Brachos on the Chafam Beis that says a Baal Keri is Osir b'divrei Torah and he's Osir in Brachos. And he eats without a bracha. Over there also, I would argue, is it daima to einin or is it daima to beis hamerchatz? Pashut is daima to beis hamerchatz. There was no ptur in his chiyuv bracha. He's also to say he's a personal beis hamerchatz. He's a personal Baal Keri. It's awesome to recite the bracha. Since it's awesome for him to recite the bracha, then the question is, so how could he eat? If you learn like the Chavetz Chaim, if you don't learn like the Chavetz Chaim, you say that any time there is no practical obligation to make a bracha, there's no Isser. Like Reb Chaim says by Yoinin. But if I want to be machalik between Yoinin and the beis hamerchatz, yesh lodon from Baal Keri. Fine. Now, I want to mention the Gemara. I don't think we have all these Maramakaimos. They're a little bit too cumbersome, but let me just tell you. There's a Bavusta Sugya on Lamed Hey Amud Beis. If a person drinks olive oil, he doesn't make a bracha. Why doesn't he make a bracha if he drinks olive oil? What is the reason? The Gemara says he doesn't make a bracha because the olive oil is mazakim. The olive oil is mazakim. Since the olive oil is mazakim, he does not make a bracha. And then the Gemara brings a similar halacha that if a person eats olive oil of truma, he doesn't pay chaimish. Why? Always when you eat truma, you pay keren v'chaimish. Here you don't pay chaimish.
Amud Beis Pesach. Amud Beis.
Lamed Hey Amud Beis. I don't know if I gave that in, but Lamed Hey Amud Beis in Masechta Brachos. So Rashi explains that the reason why you don't pay a chaimish if you drink oil, because it says ki yoichal kodesh bishkaga. You have to eat kodesh bishkaga. If you're mazik yourself, it's not an achila. What does it have to do with bracha? Rashi says the same thing by bracha, that by bracha it says v'ochalta v'savata, even though that's going in Berachos Hamazon, but Rashi's comparing the bracha achrayna to the bracha rishayna, the bracha rishayna to the bracha achrayna. So the Gemara is telling you along the shazach that if a person eats something that's mazik, and we have to know, a person eats trans fats, he probably still makes a bracha. Person eats sugar, even though it's not healthy for him. But here it seems that while he's eating, it's mazik him, he has very limited hana, you don't make a bracha. But why don't you make a bracha? So Rashi says, we learn out from Truma that an achila that is mazik you is not an achila. Where do you see you need achila by bracha? It says v'achalta v'savata by Berachos Hamazon, and hence you need an achila. And if you drink shemen zayis, it's mazik, it's not an achila. Very good. But then when we look on Daf Lamed Tes, Omid Aleph, Lamed Tes Omid Aleph, we find a case Rabbi Yochanan ate an olive, and he made a bracha achrayna. The Gemara says, how can you make a bracha on an olive? There's a pit. You take out the pit, it comes out, and you didn't eat a kazayas, right? When do you make a bracha achrayna? When you eat a kazayas. If you don't eat a kazayas, you don't make a bracha achrayna. If you don't make a bracha achrayna, so therefore, if you take an olive, you throw out the pit, you didn't eat a kazayas. We had that in the Yesod. We just learned this past Sunday here. Yes. So the Gemara gives a teretz, fine. Now Rashi says, why do you need a kazayas? Rashi says, "Gabay berchas peris aretz achila ksiv, v'achila b'kazayas." Berchas peris needs an achila, and we know an achila is a kazayas. Very good. That's halach lovaisi. You take a piece of cake, less than a kazayas, you don't make a bracha achrayna. Rashi says, but says Taisvis on the top, Hainu dafka b'bracha shlachot. Only a bracha achrayna has to have a kazayas, to be in on shear. It needs a shear. Avo bracha shlefanov, but bracha shlefanov, the first bracha, afilu pachas mikashir. Why? The aser lehenais ba'olam hazeh b'loy bracha. Bein linyan achila, bein linyan shtiya. So one second. Tais asks a question. Tais asks a question that if, or he doesn't ask the question, he explains. The Gemara is talking about bracha achrayna. Bracha achrayna we know needs a kazayas. It says v'yochalta. That's by bracha achrayna, by Berachos Hamazon, by the Shivas Minim. The pasuk's going on, whether it's the Rice of the Rabbanan, is a machlokes or Rishayim. But by bracha Rishayna, you don't need a shear. It's usher to be nena ma'olam hazeh b'loy bracha. Now, Rashi and Taisus, presumably they agree with each other. They're saying a svara. Bracha achrayna needs achila. Bracha achrayna needs achila. So therefore, you need a kazayas, and that's halacha l'maisa. Bracha rishayna doesn't need a shem achila, and therefore you do not need a kazayas. So I'm asking Mastira. We just learned on Lamed Hema Beis that if you drink shemen, the halacha is you don't make a bracha rishayna. Rashi said because it's mazik. And if it's mazi, it's not called nachila, like we proved from Truma, that if you drink shemen shel Truma, you don't pay chaimish, it's not a nachila. But we don't need a nachila for bracha rishayna. That's what Taisa says. So we have a stira l'chur between these two Gemaras. Lamed Hemabey says that if you drink shemen, it's mazik you. The halacha is that you don't make a bracha, achila ksiv bey. And then when it comes to a bracha rishayna on less than a kazayas, Rashi and Taisus put them together, says only a bracha achrayna needs a kazayas because achila ksiv bey. But a bracha rishayna doesn't need a kazayas because achila ksiv bey. What do you mean achila ksiv bey? But we see that if it's mazikyu, Rashi says you don't make a bracha because it's not an achila. So I want to suggest something. It's a dvar chiddush in all these cheshbonos that maybe and possibly when you make a bracha rishona, you have to look at two aspects. Number one, if you're nana, the halacha is you must make a bracha. Furthermore, there was a takana to make a bracha, just like a bracha achrayna. There's a chayv to make a bracha rishona, like we said before, like Rabbi Yashiv said, that there's a chayv to make a bracha rishona, like a bracha achrayna, and that we learned out from bracha achrayna, but that needs a shame achila. That needs a shame achila. So it comes out, when you make a bracha rishona, you are fulfilling two obligations. One obligation, you can't be nana bracha, you're preventing yourself from being over in Issa. But there's another obligation. When you eat, you must make a bracha. And that we learn out from bracha achrayna, that there is a chiyuv lahoydis laHashem, and that is with the lashon achila. Having said that, possibly, the Gemara understood if it's mazik you don't have true hana. So therefore, you don't have to make a bracha rishona because aser l'adam lenis malazeh bracha. It's not hana. But l'maisa you're eating, and Chazal made a takana when you eat, you have to make a bracha. So make a bracha when you drink shemen. You're not really nena, but still there's a chayvus bracha. Oh, there's a chayvus bracha. That's a good shaila. And that the Gemara says when an achila is being mazik you, so it doesn't have a shem achila, so I can't be machai myself because of the second din. The first din, that I can say simply, it doesn't rise to the hana that requires me to make a bracha, but still it's not kana. And achila, you make a bracha. You don't focus on the hana. Achila, you make a bracha. And that we say it's not an achila because it's mazik. So kum techais, when you make your bracha rishayna, there are two mechayvim, like Rabbi Yashiv said. There's a mechayv of lahoydis, that you need a shem achila. There's a mechayv also lenis bracha, that you don't need a shem achila. So now when we go back to Daf Lamed Tes, if a person pachas mekashir in hachinami, it's not an achila, and you're not chayv as achila. You only chayv because aser la'adam lehenes me'olam hazeh b'loy bracha. Okay, you have to know that agrees with Reb Chaim. I don't really, the olam should think about itself, but whatever it is, with these approaches, we're saying there are two obligations to make a bracha.
So I have two questions.
Well, one second, wait till afterwards, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Okay, if you don't mind. Now, let me go a step further and expound a little bit on these concepts. There is a halacha that if you eat something that is a tafel, I'm not going to speak about iker, but tafel barichas, I understand there's someone else saying a shir, but just to understand this din, that if you eat the tafel before the iker, the halacha is that you make a bracha on the tafel. Right? So let's say, for instance, I'm about to have a shot of whiskey, and I say, oy, that's going to burn my throat. So I take a cracker beforehand. Do I have to make a bracha on the cracker? So the Vilna Gaon says in Siman, I think it's Siman Reish Beis. He says you make a bracha. I mean, the Ramah really says it. You make a bracha. But he says very interesting. You know why? What was the Vilna Gaon saying? What does he have to bring down? You make a bracha because you can't eat without a bracha. What was the Vilna Gaon teaching us by saying that if you eat a tafel before the ikar, he's saying that you have to make a bracha on the food you're eating before. What does he have to say it for? The halacha is that a person eats something, he has to make a bracha. He didn't make a bracha. The Vilna Gaon is teaching us something, that there is a good svara you don't make a bracha. What's the good svara you don't make a bracha? Because the halacha is you don't have to make a bracha on a tafel. You don't have to make a bracha on the tafel. Now that you're eating it before you have to, It's a kasha. Why? You don't make a bracha on the tafel. Says the Vilna Gaon, yeah, because aser lahadim leneseb loy bracha. And let me explain what the Vilna Gaon means. It's reish yud beis. It means like this. We said there are two obligations when you make a bracha. One obligation is you have to make a bracha l'hoydis l'Hashem, and there's another obligation of aser la'adam lehenis b'ilum bracha, and they can part company sometimes. Where did I tell you they part company? By lesson the kazayas, they parted company. Says the Vilna Gaon like this: you have a good kasha. If you eat a tafel before an ikr, you should not make a bracha. Don't make a bracha if you eat a tafel before ikr, because a tafel does not need a bracha. Says the Vilna Gaon, you're right. It doesn't need a bracha, mitzad hilchis bracha. But lamashal, or not lamashal, but if you're nenem or olam zev bracha, that you can't do. You can't go to hektish, take some hektish and pay later. That's like Rabbi Yasha said. You can make a bracha later to satisfy your hilchis brachas, but you can't make your bracha later and erase the isser of being moil or being geisel, being nenem olam bracha. So it's very geschmack. The Vilna Gaon, the great, it's from the Beis Yosef, I think, but I saw when I was preparing, I looked over the Vilna Gaon says. He says it that you have a good kasha. When I eat the tafel, I should make a bracha. Why shouldn't I make a bracha? Because the tafel doesn't need a bracha. So the Vilna Gaon, you're right, a tafel doesn't need a bracha. Don't get so nervous. You'll make a bracha later on the yikr, the tafel doesn't need a bracha. But I have a different kasha. Even though the tafel doesn't need a bracha, but it's aser lahadim lehenis ma'ilum hazeh b'loy bracha. There's no way you could be nen without making a bracha. If there's no way you nen a bracha, therefore, says the Halakha Vilna Gaon, that's the reason why you make the bracha before. I don't know if I could take the question, if you don't mind. I'm not being so friendly this morning for the people who are present, because I want to finish up, and then you'll still be here. If they ask me a question, they won't be here later. I don't know if they could ask me a question. I don't know how this thing works. But please excuse me, Alan and Scott. Now, let me go a step further. There's a very interesting Shar Hatzin in Reish Ches. In Reish Ches, there's an interesting Shar Hatzin. Bir Halacha Shar Hatzin. Hold on a second. Here. In order to make a bracha achrayna, as we learned, you have to eat a shear, a kazayas, right? How much you have to drink to make a bracha achrayna? We don't know. Maybe a kazayas, maybe moli lugmav, and maybe a revius. Therefore, it's brought down, interestingly, a person should not drink a kazayas till below a revius. Why? Because if you took kazayas, he has a suffix bracha achrayna. So if you want to take a drink either less than a kazayas or more than a revius. So the Chavetz Chaim says in the Shar Hatzin, Ayin, he says he has a moradik suffix. He says a person drank, let's say, roiv revius. The halacha is when you drink wine, you don't have to make a bracha on the other drinks. It's similar. If a person eats bread, he doesn't have to make a bracha on the food he eats during the meal. The same thing. If you drink wine, it's the reish l'chol ha'mashkin. You don't have to make a bracha on the water or the soda that you drink. So if you had a kiddush, not at a kiddush, you're at home making kiddush, and then you want a drink of soda, no bracha. But says the Chavetz Chaim, what happens if a person drinks, let's say, roiv revius? He says, I don't know what to do. A al hagefen I can't make. Why can't I make an al hagefen? Because, why can't I make an al hagefen? Because maybe I didn't drink enough. So should I make a brain of fushes? But maybe I can make a brain of fushes, but I can't, because maybe really I'm chayiv to make al hagefen. You hear the dilemma. Person drank roiv revius. He drank Roiv Revius. He has a suffix if he has to pay Alagefen. So the Chofetz Chaim says he doesn't know what to do. Alagefen he can't make suffix, brachas, lahak. Break brain of fushes. Says the Chofetz Chaim, he doesn't know how he can make the royal of fushes. Why? How can you make a brain of fushes? You hear? It's Negeya very often. You know, a guy goes to a kiddush, he takes a sip of wine. How much are you taking? Kazayas. This good. I'll go upon him. You can't make your Alagefen. You can't make your Alagefen. So then you don't know. You know, you can eat other things that you make brain of fushes. I mean, you're not stuck. But in any way, this is the Shiloh. You hear the Shiloh clearly. A guy drank a Kazayas. A guy drank Roy Revius. He can't make Alagefen. Chofetz Chaim says, but maybe he's chayiv to make Alagefen. We don't know. He can't make it, but maybe he's chayiv. So maybe he can't make the brain of fushes. Clear vidatog. Right. I think the Chazon Ish, Ramosha, they say they don't understand what the hell Chofetz Chaim is talking about. When do you say if you make a bracha on Brei Pri HaGofen, you don't have to make a bracha on the mashke? Hein bracha rishon and hein bracha achroina. That's only if you made the bracha rishon. The bracha rishon patters you from the bracha rishon on the water. The bracha achroina on the wine patters you from the brain and flesh on the water. But if you don't make it, I ask you a question. A person comes in the shul, he says, I'm not making a Brei Pri HaGofen. He forgot about it. And then later, he wants to drink soda. He has to make a shackle on the soda. There's a raya from Allah. I don't want to go into it because it's not my Indian. Maybe someone else can speak about it. But Allah l'mayis avadis, come out of before shalacha. Come out of before shalacha. It even says that if you're eating a suda and someone sends you that you didn't anticipate, you maybe have to make a bracha on that also. I tell people if a person's on a strict diet and he says, I don't eat potatoes. It's not good, very high glycemic. And then afterwards he caves in. Could be those potatoes. He has to make hadam in the middle of the suda. But that's when you didn't have kavan on it. But here we're talking about a case. He didn't make the bracha. Of vata, he has to make the bracha. Because it's mafurish. When I say mafurish with rye is that if you drink wine, let's say you took a cup of wine, you say, Geshmak, oy vey, I didn't make a Brei Pri HaGofen. Then you want to drink water. Avad, you have to make a drink on water. So what's the difference over here? You hear. So this I want to offer the teretz. Lid Vareinu, I think comes out, Yishmak. It's a Shiloh. Why can't you make bracha on Torah? You get so much hanaf from it. No. Why don't you make it? No, I have to think of a good answer. The Ram said, Kishem shemavarchem al ha-peris mavarchem al ha-mitzvahs. Mitzvahs also like a little berach saden. Anyway, look in the Eglei Talmud and Zaktom. In any event, I want to offer this explanation. And we'll say like this. A bracha achroina, the Chofetz Chaim learned, if you're eating it with an ikr, you're drinking it with wine, you don't make a bracha on the tafel, even if you forgot to make it on the ikr. But a bracha rishayna, if you didn't make it on the ikr, then you have to make it on the tafel. Ma nishtana bracha achroina mi bracha rishayna. With our raid, it's very pasha. When you eat the tafel, you drank the wine, there's no chiyuv to make a bracha on the tafel. If you drank the ikr, the tafel doesn't have a chayvis bracha. But good, the tafel doesn't have a chayvis bracha. But that's only by bracha achroina. By bracha rishayna, it doesn't have a chayvis bracha also. But there's another klal. Asur lahadam lenis ma'il mazeh b'lei bracha. Mamish, what the Goyin said. The Goyin said that if you eat a tafel before the ikr, I don't know why you make a bracha. You shouldn't make a bracha because it's a tafel. A tafel doesn't have a bracha. But there's another yesod we're saying that the isser to be nenem ma'il mazeh b'lei bracha is halacha that you can't eat a tafel even though you're going to eat an ikr. So therefore, it's very geshmak. Chofetz Chaim's talking about a bracha achrona. He says, very good. It's a tafel, no bracha achrona, no chayvus bracha on a tafel. But yet, we could ask the shaila on bracha rishayna, if you didn't make the bracha on the yikr, you have to make a bracha on the tafel. That's the Goyen shaila. That's a new halacha, because also lo adelenis ma'ilom zeh bracha. The bracha achrona, there are some shitas, maybe a pnei Yeshua this, but I mean, big shitas. But l'maisa, like I showed you in Taisus, when you make a bracha achrona, it's just a chayvus bracha. There's no also lo adelenis like bracha. That's only before you eat. So therefore, if you make a bracha on the yikr, you don't make a bracha on the tafel. If you don't make a bracha rishayna on the yikr, you have to make a bracha on the tafel. Why? Because aser lahadam lenis bracha, even though it's a tafel and there's no chayvus bracha, but you can't be nenable like bracha. You can't do it like the guy says. It's impossible. It doesn't help me. I can't be nena. When it comes to bracha achrona, there is no halacha of aser lenis like bracha. It's only a chayvus bracha. Since it's only a chayvus bracha, therefore on the tafel you don't make a bracha, even though the ikr is there. Okay, I trust it was fully understandable. Be'ezus Hashem. If anyone has any shilas, you can email them to the Kail. I don't know, and I'll be happy to respond if I can. Okay.
I think there was one or two people earlier, Kail, who had shilas, and you said you'd answer at the end. I don't know if they remember the shilas. Sometimes
no, there people are present here. Sure.
Here, yeah.
Oh, so could they maybe ask him and the Israel can hear your
answer? Okay, Alan, you have a question? Let's Scott go first.
Rob has to repeat the question so Alan can hear it here.
I'll repeat it, yeah.
The ikr and tafel, the tafel does have a chiyuv bracha, but the bracha is the bracha on the ikr. So that you're learning different. There's no chiyuv whatsoever.
No, I'm explaining. I mean, Scott just asked me to elaborate. I'm just saying, on a tafel, there's no chiyuv bracha. But there's a problem. You can't be nen and ma'ilom zeh b'loy bracha.
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to make a bracha.
Yeah. But I'm saying, in the case where you have the cracker first.
Yeah.
You says, ideally, there should be no reason to make a bracha on the cracker.
Right.
But there is because of maybe there isn't a bracha on the tafel. It's the bracha that you would have made on the ikr.
No, but I'm saying, but there's no bracha on the tafel. That's what you see. When you eat a tafel, you don't have to make a bracha. So the question is why? So you could learn pshat because you don't have to make a bracha on the tafel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying the only reason why you make the bracha on the tafel is because asur lenis. Yeah, I was just explaining the two concepts. Alan.
Okay, so my question number 3 is this.
3?
Number 3. The first 2 are almost the same. But
I don't know.
The big question. Hold on. Yeah. The important one is 3. Okay, so when you're talking about a suda and making a bracha for a suda, very frequently you have no idea what's involved. You don't know what's ahead of you, right? So then when it comes to you not singing, you don't want potatoes in particular. Let's say, so you make hadama on the potatoes, but what if there's another hadama?
But yeah, no kavanah on this food.
Yeah, you're not going to, that's cheap.
That's it.
Second, the admittedly insignificant shell of a beitza, when you're talking about a measurement of beitza, is that like the pit of an olive that you have to do without?
That's beyond the scope of this year.
All right, then the last thing, the two thing this year, what if someone's crazy enough to eat a whole olive? Yeah. Then it's a kazayis.
Yes, Alan wants to know, eat the olive with the pit, and you swallow the pit, then it's considered,
if you can eat sugar,
then it's kazayis. But I don't have to tell you, when it comes to kazayis, we don't know what a kazayis is. We have the famous Slach, who says Niskat nu habei, Niskat nu kazesim. Okay, it's a very big pleasure to partake in this learning this morning. I hope it was beneficial to people. Everyone should have a good day and enjoy the rest of the shiur.
Okay, Rabbi Yashchek, Kvader of Blumberg.
My pleasure.
We really appreciate it, especially since it spoke exactly to some of the yanim that we are learning. It was exactly on point. Yashchek Chachem.
Okay. Baruch Tia.
For the rest of the island who would like to stay on the line, Rabbi Weiss will be on momentarily.